Welcome to this video where we're going to show you how to run your Python programs using Visual Studio Code instead of JES. The other difference is we're going to be running Python 3 instead of Python version 2, and Python 3 is the latest version. So the first thing we want to do is probably create a new file. So I'm going to go here and say up to a new file, and we can type the file name here. So I'm going to call this program1 and .py. Now, be very careful not to put spaces in your file name. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. Now it's asking where I want to save the file. So I created a CIS 101 folder on my desktop just so I know where my files are. This doesn't have to be on the desktop. It could be anywhere you want. Just make sure you know where it is. And I recommend no spaces because that'll make things easier later on. So I'm going to click on that folder and I'm going to save my pg1.py file in that folder. Okay. And you can tell Visual Studio Code, it allows us to edit lots of different programming languages or create programs in lots of different programming languages. And you can tell that it already knows that this is Python. So we're going to go ahead and write a simple method. Okay, so you can see here I wrote a method or a procedure called say hello. And all it's going to do is print hello world to the screen. Now, one way to run this program is to come over here and click the run button. Now, this will pop open this little window where we can see the results. We can see that hello world was printed out. And down here, it allows us to type commands just like the bottom part of JES. And we just click this run button and it calls that method that we created again. And this is one way that you can run and test your programs. Now you might need to install some other stuff on your computer to make sure it works. So running programs with this button is pretty nice, and if that works for you, that's great. But for a couple of homework assignments, you are going to need to learn how to run programs using the terminal window. And if this doesn't work on your computer, then that's okay. You could probably run your programs in the terminal window if you installed Python correctly. Now you can launch a terminal window in Windows by going down to the bottom and searching for the CMD, and that'll open up what's called the command prompt. On a Mac, you can do command space and start typing terminal, and you'll see the terminal program right here that you can launch up. But Visual Studio Code has a terminal built in. You just have to go to terminal and go to new terminal. And this opens a terminal on the bottom. Now you need to make sure that your terminal directory, the directory that it's running commands from, is the same directory where you saved your file. And remember, I saved my file on the desktop, so I have to go cd desktop. And that changes the directory where it's going to look for files to the desktop. And we can see it's printing desktop out here. This works both on Mac and Windows machines. And then we can also go cd CIS 101, which is the name of the folder that I saved my file in. And we can see that we're in the same folder where we saved the file. Now this is a little different for Windows and a Mac. I'm on a Mac and I could do ls and it lists out the files. You can see that my Python program is saved in this folder. If you're on a Windows machine, the command is dir, and then you can press enter and it will list out your files. Now let's say that if we want to go up a folder, let's say maybe we saved a file on the desktop and not the 101, then we could go cd ... and that makes us go up a file, and now we're on the desktop. So one more time, cd 101 to go down into that folder. So we change directories into the right folder. Now this right here can only run commands that launch programs. This is not running Python. So we can run Python just by typing Python3, and now we have the bottom part of JES. But we can't call say hello because our program hasn't been loaded into this Python window. It doesn't know what say hello is. We can get out of this and do exit right here, and now we're back to the area where we launch programs. So one bit of confusion is you might be in here and be trying to type Python commands and you can't type Python commands when we're in the program that's used to launch programs. What you have to do first is enter in Python. Now we're running Python, And you notice we have these three arrows right here, just like the bottom of JES. Now you can type Python commands. To get out of this Python commands, we just call the exit method, and that will exit out of our program. And now we're back in the area where we can launch our programs. But now let's say that we want to run our program. So we do Python3 and then the name of our program. So the name of our program is pg1.py. We got to make sure we type it correctly, and we can press enter. And you can see that it printed hello world, and then it exited Python completely. So we're back in the area where we can launch programs, but we can't type Python commands in this area. So how does this work? Well, Python runs by executing commands from top to bottom, so the beginning of our file to the end of our file. So right here, it says define a new function. And like this is like writing down a recipe, but it's not going to make that function happen. So if I delete this, and I save my file, and I run the Python again, you can see that nothing happened. That's because the only thing I did is write down a recipe, or I told Python about this function, say hello, but I never called it. So what I have to do is get out of it. And that means I have to go back to the beginning, my indentation level. So I'm not editing the method anymore. And then I have to say the name of my function with the parentheses to call it. Now I can save that. And now when I run it, this calls this function that then prints out hello. So this part down here is kind of what you would call the main method, or what happens when you run your program. So usually you'll define a bunch of functions to solve your problem, and then down at the bottom, you'll call the functions to make sure they happen.